good. Got it.
We'll officially welcome everybody here.
Yeah.
The first JAU Zoom meeting of 2022.
Well, before I was interrupted, how you feeling, Arnold?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did everyone get the email? I passed, copied and pasted.
I just pulled it, Dave. Just thank you for sending it out. I hope this doesn't bore people about medical stuff. You know?
Yeah, I got the email, Dennis. That's why I'm asking him how he's feeling.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Arnold.
Yeah. Well, I feel good now, and my spirits are high. You know, I think Dennis kind of hit it on the head. Did you guys see his response back?
No, I
No.
Well,
Thank you, Dennis.
you know, I'll give it just kind of what it is. But you know, I've just had some medical turnaround challenges this year. But Dennis wrote me, "Wow, talk about having 2022 already laid out for you. But Father be praised, as you know, by now nothing happens outside of Father's intention to demonstrate how He can turn everything to good."
Mm-hmm.
Been spending time in Colossians recently. I'm struck by Paul's words in 1:9-12. Have we yet realized God? Is there so much He wants to know about Himself and Jesus, and how that happens? Only through the challenges of this life in the flesh can we come to know the unfathomable might of His glory. And it goes on from there.
Yeah.
So isn't that great, guys? Talk about hitting the nail on the head.
Well, there's going to be some times, I've had them in my life, and I'm sure you guys have too, where the only way we can see it, the only way we can see it through is through Him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's the only way out.
Mhm.
The only way up is to go down a little.
Yeah.
That's good, David.
You know, this brings up a interesting subject, actually. Years ago, and I imagine they may still be around, there was a healing ministry who believed that God would heal you completely, basically meaning God would heal you the way you wanted to be healed, if you were faithful. And if you weren't being healed, then you just weren't faithful enough, which, you know, is a bunch of bunk.
Yeah.
You know, Andy, after reading what you and Chrissy posted, during your bout with cancer, did you realize God was there, or did you not realize it until hindsight?
I knew it the whole time. I mean, I grew up from the time I was 5. My mom teaching me about Christ, but I wouldn't say I really lived for Him at all until a few months ago. But I knew it there. I was actually looking back at my notes in my phone yesterday, and all the way back to 2012, which was my remission, the year I had my remission. I would post reading the Bible, like really trying to be as close to Him as I could be, but I just didn't know about this at all, about the Jesus in you thing. And that was really the moment I got close to God. But on cancer, I don't know. It's hard because, like, yes, but I definitely was not really living in Him at all.
Or did you struggle with anger about not being healed the way you wanted to be healed, or quickly enough?
No. From the time I was told that I was diagnosed, well, it was like the doctor came in, told me I had brain cancer, and I was kind of like, that's bad, right? I was kind of, I don't know if cocky is the right word, but I was maybe a little bit like, I don't know, I had this feeling like this is not the end for me. I just kind of knew that. So I had like a faith, but I just wasn't living it, you know, at all. So I knew God was there.
So the cancer was perhaps something that drew that faith out of you?
I think getting the cancer was like, I knew immediately when I started having problems. So my whole thing was like an emergency. I couldn't get out of bed. The ambulance showed up, carried me out of my house, drove me to the hospital. It was like an emergency where I was like, if I didn't get this taken care of, I was probably going to have my head blow up. So it's like kind of a big deal. It's scary and intense. And I just knew that God was, I don't know why I knew. I just knew. I could tell this is something that was like God was using this to change me. I knew I had been living in a way I shouldn't for years and years and years. And honestly, if this hadn't happened to me, I don't know where I'd be. You know, I feel like, I really feel like this was like the weirdest blessing, getting sick. Like it really just pulled me out of a way I was living. A little better.
You know that's a phenomenal statement about your illness being a blessing.
It was.
Because too often when people go through something like you've been through, something like I've been through, or others have been through that are very difficult, can be very traumatizing, they don't understand that blessings are coming out of it and will continue to come out of it. Okay. Too often we get too caught up in self-pity. We succumb to the pity that's being thrown on us by others, and we don't focus on what good can come out of it.
Yeah. I think I wasn't stuck in like self-pity, but I definitely was hard on myself. Like about how I was before I got sick. I really like, beat myself up pretty bad about like, I don't know, it's like you have been living a certain way and suddenly you get sick and you're like, that's what I did with my life, you know? And that's honestly how I felt. Like I knew after that I was not gonna live that way anymore. I was like, okay, you know, and that I feel that's exactly what God was doing with it. You know, he was like kind of, it's weird, but I feel like he kind of took me and kind of shook me and said, wake up, you know, you gotta start living right, live for me and do stuff. I want you to work for me, you know. I don't know. I was so focused on my own goals, my own desires, and kind of like living my life and kind of living it up and do whatever I wanted. That I didn't really think about, even for a second, think about serving God at all, you know, not for like a second. That wasn't where I was at all. So when I got sick, it was like, okay, if you make it through this, because I didn't know. When I went into the OR, I literally gave Chrissy a kiss and said, sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to say. I told her I loved her, I think. Did I tell you I love you? Okay. But and I said, I'm sorry. And it was like, I didn't know what else to say because I felt like I just had messed everything up. And I knew that. So I knew from that point on, I was just going to be different. And it was a decade-long process of from my remission on from that point. But that was like, what, 8 years in, something like that. So it took me 12. How long? From the time I had my remission in 2012 to now to really
9 years.
get myself together, you know.
Well, I think it just would be so interesting to, I mean, not that we want to go through it and at all again, but it would be so interesting to go through something like that now. Knowing Jesus in us is, that would be different. And anyway, I don't know what that would be like, but we definitely felt God with us the whole time. It's just that feeling of God being somewhere else and us being, you know, earth side and him being heaven side, or, you know, that sort of a feeling, but then knowing that that's not it at all would be, anyway, so.
Well, David, you went through that process with me as well as Dennis did when my mom was sick before she passed away. And when she passed away, I mean, I I seriously considered just walking away from God for a little bit because I was so pissed off. I was so angry because for a few years, all of my prayers had gone towards her recovery or her getting better. And when that didn't happen, it was like I had been betrayed or stabbed in the back or just brushed by the wayside.
Mhm, mhm.
What I didn't consider was, the pain and the suffering that my mom was going through. And that when she passed away, she didn't have to deal with that anymore.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. David,
Yeah.
tell everybody about your own experience. I don't think people know, this group doesn't know what you endured for about, what, 2, 3, how long was it? About 3 years, wasn't it?
Well, I was in the hospital for 2 years.
Yeah.
When was this dates?
Oh gosh, this would have happened July 2nd,
Mhm.
1995 at 6:30 in the morning. I was a quadriplegic.
Wow.
Wow.
I had all my life I had been very active and in sports. And when I was 39, I was in my 13th year of playing soccer goalie. And I was training for the upcoming season, lifting weights one day, and I pulled my neck muscle, which and it hurt. Well, after a couple of weeks, I went to the doctor because it wasn't getting any better. And he concurred that it's probably just a muscle pull, give it a couple more weeks. And after a couple of weeks, it still wasn't getting any better. And I noticed my left arm was starting to weaken. Long story short, after going to a neurologist and all this and MRIs, we discovered that there was a defect in my spinal column. Your spinal column normally, say, is this big around, and then for the spine, and then your spinal, the middle of it, and it's surrounded with fluid. And when I pulled that muscle, it allowed a bone chip to stab into my spinal cord, which was causing my left arm to atrophy. Normally, if your spinal cord or spinal column is the right size, they go in through the front of the neck, they clean everything out, and life is good. You go on with life. In my case, because the spinal column was so small, they had to go in through the back of the neck, cut the spinal arch off on 4 sections, and clean all the bone out. So that left me with no protection over my spinal column. And the doctor warned me, he says, you'll never play soccer again. And if you ever get hit in the back of the neck, you risk being paralyzed. And this was in 1988, 1989, somewhere around there. Well, in 2004, or actually 2005, I was on my way to work. I lived in a little town called Boone Lake, which is south of Spokane, or north of Spokane here. And I hit some black ice going to work. And my truck went across, I was headed southbound. I went across the northbound lanes into a ditch. And in the process, I hit my neck on the headrest and paralyzed myself.
Wow.
So I was in the hospital for 2 years,
Oh my gosh.
learning how to do everything all over again that we take for granted.
David, were you married then? Did you have support around you, people around you?
Well, just my immediate family, my 3 kids and my wife were up here.
But you weren't married to her, remarried to her yet.
No, we were still married at that time.
Oh, you were? Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we didn't divorce
that's right.
till 1999.
Yeah.
So, and kudos to my wife. Had I not recovered, I don't think we would have divorced.
Mm,
She would have stayed with me,
mhm.
stayed by me had I not recovered. Unless I continued to be the ass that I was and make life totally unbearable. But,
Well, go on with the story. Go on. You're
so
a hero.
after a few days of being in intensive care, I fell into a pity party. And it was like, if I'm gonna be paralyzed the rest of my life, I don't want to live. Well, the pity party started when I realized that I was paralyzed and I couldn't kill myself. And as much as people had stated they wanted to kill me, I didn't think any of them would follow through with it.
They were
So,
only
so after about 45
Well, they had their
minutes,
chance.
yeah. So after about 45 minutes of a pity party, I realized that I still had a choice. I could feel sorry for myself, or I could try to make the best of it. And I decided at that time that I would try to make the best of it. Now, understand, I was coming, I didn't realize at the time, but I was coming to the end of a 30-year run from God. So I really had no awareness of God in this situation until probably a few weeks later. And I kind of turned back to Christian Science because it was the only thing I knew. And my dad was harping on me to start denying this whole process because Christian Science believes none of this stuff happens. It's all a lie. My dad convinced my wife to call a Christian Science practitioner who refused to work with me because I was in the hospital and was admitting to the lie, which my wife just, when she called my dad, she just ripped him a new one over his religious beliefs. Anyway, for the next 2 years, I would be in therapies, learning how to walk, brush my teeth, feed myself, do everything we take for granted. It's incredibly humbling to have your pre-teenage kids come in, comb your hair, brush your teeth, feed you when you're 44 years old. But I soon discovered that this was one of the biggest blessings in my life.
Mhm.
Now, the accident, like I say, took place in 1995. It would be another 4 or 5 years before I actually became a Christian. I believe it was early 2000 that I started going to New Hope Church. And I went just to get a friend off my back. My wife and I had been divorced about a year at this point. But the recovery I would not consider full because my left hand is mostly paralyzed.
Same
I
here.
still have a lot of atrophy in my left arm and left leg and not near as strong as I was. But probably long about 2002, I was reading through the book of Luke again. And I was asking God, I've been asking God for about 2 years, did you heal me? And after about 2 years, as I'm reading through the book of Luke, I really felt the Holy Spirit say to me, yes, I healed you. And then I asked the obvious question, why didn't you heal me completely? And the answer was, I healed you to where you were usable. which I immediately understood that had I been healed the way I wanted to be healed, I wouldn't have continued walking with God.
Yeah.
I would have gone back to my old life. But because of my disabilities, I started experiencing things. I ended up going on mission trips. And the blessing of a mission trip,
Mhm.
you know, I went on missions with an organization that was using soccer to spread the gospel. And, you know, I'd been a fanatic for soccer for a good 13 years. I didn't discover soccer until I was 25. And that's when I started playing. And I remember I was walking through New Hope Church one day, and I was really excited about Christianity and learning about Christianity. And I stopped and I just looked up to the ceiling and I said, God, wouldn't it be cool if I could share Christianity with soccer? And I thought, oh, what a stupid idea that is. And I continued on. Well, it was probably 4 or 5 months later when I got introduced to this guy by the name of Don Brenneman, who was part of Sports Outreach, and he was using soccer to spread the gospel in Africa. And so off to Africa I went to share the gospel and teach soccer. The other benefits, blessings of this accident was that after about 7 years of me denying that I was disabled, when I finally came to grips with the fact that I was disabled, I went on to disability. And that opened up the opportunities to go on mission trips and to actually become a full-time grandfather. Because now I didn't necessarily have to worry about income. I end up moving back to Spokane. I do end up getting a job over here as a landlord, but it gave me the opportunity to spend a tremendous amount of time with my grandchildren and with my kids that live over here. Okay, instead of my grandchildren, or instead of my grandchildren being stuck in a daycare,
Mhm.
Grandpa takes care of them.
Mhm.
Okay, which is just an incredible blessing for me and hopefully for
Yeah.
my
it's great.
grandkids and my kids.
Mm.
And those are just a couple of the blessings that have come out of this whole mess. There are countless others that when we stop and look at what we've gone through and we avoid the pity parties and start with the idea of, okay, let's make the best of this.
Yeah.
All kinds of things start to happen.
I spent years. So back to what you asked me, I spent years. I was suicidal, like nonstop. Almost every single day of my life. I would get depressed. I was suicide. I had PTSD, and I was just telling Chrissy, I have not been depressed lately. I've had PTSD, and forever I would get catatonic, kind of drone out on something, just stare at a wall, and I would go in my mind. I would be like in the self-defense thing where I'd be protecting myself. And I'd start doing like a sleeper hold right here in real life. But I'm doing it in my mind, thinking I'm defending myself. And I was like, I'm going crazy. And then all this came on about 3 months ago, and I just started changing. And I haven't had that now because I'm so focused on God's word and what He's doing in me. I don't have that anymore. It's amazing, actually.
It was actually kind
That's
of funny.
awesome.
Yeah, Dennis said to Andy, he said, what if what you experience with PTSD and depression and all of that, what if it actually is actually a strength? What if it's actually a blessing that you go through this? And sure enough, I mean, and it's amazing just the way that you see something, or, you know, who knows kind of what that will look like down the road, or whatever. But it definitely does change too, the way you see things that you go through day to day, or things that come up. It's like you have to remind yourself when you get bad news or something happens, wait a second, I can't wait to see what God's doing in this, you know, or what he has for me in this, or what blessings are coming from this.
I didn't think any of it would ever change. I got to the point where this is my life, and so it's gonna be till I die, and I didn't know how any of that would ever change. I knew I couldn't do it myself. I knew that, and it was like, it was just something I dealt with. I was a brain injury, and that was that, you know. But it's been changing, and it's pretty amazing.
So that's the other thing that's interesting, and the healing process. So when you're talking about we've seen with Andy new healings, like it, you know, yes, he has muscle issues and
the
pain
healing
and
for
all
me
that,
has been more spiritual and in my brain.
but
like,
it becomes physical, because then
it
it's like,
becomes physical.
depression's very real, but then, you know.
I mean, I had to learn to walk again. So it's
Yeah.
like, I could not walk. I was stuck in bed for 3 years straight. And I had to learn how to walk again. And I can walk pretty good. My balance isn't fantastic, but I don't let it bother me. I do what I can with what I can. And
yeah, after his third World Series, he was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
I can't do this again.
I remember laid in bed, and the World Series came on again. It was like the third one. I was like, okay, I gotta get out of bed now.
I can't do this.
Hey, Andy, I just had a question. Did you, before you got before your illness,
Mhm.
you mentioned that you were kind of living maybe the wrong kind of life, maybe those are the wrong words, but did you realize you were living life the wrong way back then?
I mean, yeah,
I
knew it. I was being disobedient, and I mean, I literally just did whatever I wanted. And
yeah. Well, I think, you know, you feeling that way, you know, tells me that God was with you even back then.
he was. I know he was.
Yeah.
And in the strangest way, I knew it then. And even when I was doing stuff, I knew it then. I was kind of just like, slapping him in the face, saying I'm gonna go do it anyway. And I kind of knew it, you know. It's like I wasn't denying that at all.
Yeah.
It's hard to, like, looking back that far. I have memory problems, so it's hard to remember everything, but the bits and pieces I do remember, I remember just being kind of like, get out of my way, I'm gonna go do whatever I want. And I don't know, my dad died of cancer when I was 15, and so it was like this kind of weird connection where I had cancer at 30, and I lived it up in my 20s, and then I got brain cancer around 30, and it was kind of obvious that God was shutting me down, you know, and I accepted it, and it was like I still kind of resisted him for years, and I don't know, I just kind of got brought to a point where there's nowhere else I could go, and I was like, okay.
My own experience, you know, for me, I mean, Dennis knows my story. I mean, for me doing things that were wrong and doing things that really, like you said, just, you know, going out and living our lives our way.
Yeah.
He didn't stop me. I mean, there's you know, consequences for the choices we make, and I paid that price. But there came a point, you know, one night where, you know, I had that revelation where it was revealed to me where, you know, hey, this isn't the person you are. You know, I have better things for you.
Yeah. Well,
I think he chooses that time, or he gives us that time.
Absolutely.
In his timing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Beth, David, one of you starting to ask or say something a little earlier?
Oh, I was just gonna ask Andy, where is this post? Is it in the Facebook group?
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
on.
Well, there was a post that I saw yesterday that's in the Facebook
Yes.
group.
Yeah,
Andy,
You were referred to in the first place about his story.
right.
Yeah.
that's on the
Andy wrote
Facebook
this.
group.
Andy has a website or a
Oh,
blog, and he blogged the other day, and it's kind of he wrote a piece on his story, sent it to me. I just threw that link up on our Facebook group page.
oh, okay.
So
It's,
go to Facebook and our Jesus is Us group
Gotcha.
page. Okay, you'll find it there.
it's a website I designed years ago that I revamped when I was sick, and it was about music. I posting music I posted on iTunes and stuff.
Mhm.
And this whole thing changed me, so I had a link called Jesus Lives in You, and a page I made for it. Eventually, I'd like to get like a URL just for that page alone, because it's like something I'll be able to share with people.
Expand.
I don't really want to share my music. It's not like that. I'm proud of the stuff I did, but it's like hard because I was like, do I put this on my music page? That's what I have right now, so I just threw it up. It was kind of something I just felt like I needed to do.
Yeah,
And
good job. We appreciate it.
That was
So,
the
Beth, how many of us remember Beth went through a period of challenge here in this last year? Or was it year
I
before?
was gonna bring that up. I was gonna bring it up because Beth might not even realize how much of an impact she was when she got her cancer diagnosis, and people would come in to see her, and they were all teary-eyed and sad because it was cancer, and kind of like, it's the doom and gloom. And Beth just had this spirit and this happiness about her that turned everybody's spirits around. She just had a joy, and it was really contagious, and people left the house totally flipped around with their thought process on what was going on. And I don't think she intentionally did that or knew she was doing it. It's just who she was or is. And
well, she has that personality.
Beth, how do you describe that in your own mind and heart? What was going on in you insofar as God and what he was showing you, or was he?
Well, it was New Year's Eve of 2019. And we were gonna have people at our house that night, and I had to go get my yearly mammogram, which I'd put off until the absolute end of the year, New Year's Eve. And normally it's a 20-minute process, and I was there for 2.5 hours or something. So they kept coming back and saying, well, we're gonna have to redo this. And then it's like, you're going to have to wait for the radiologist, and then the radiologist would come and he would look at it. They did a sonogram or whatever. And I knew then, I knew. And there was just this ominous, like, gosh, like, dang, that feeling like, man, what did I do with my life? And anyway, that was the worst day. That was worse than actually finding out for real, because I had to leave just with the radiologist saying, it looks cancerous. And, then you're going to have to schedule a biopsy and this and that. And so came home crying. And my mom came over, and it was just like, I can't describe it, but just this peace that we just started talking, and it was like, this is part of my story, because we had been, meeting with you and just realizing, like, this is my story now, and I don't know the end of it, So, I don't want to assume all this stuff and doom and gloom, and I'm just going to have to go forward. And so that gave me some peace. And yeah, and then just, I guess, my personality, I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. And I just deal with things with humor anyway. And I just tried to find the humor in everything. Like, one of my first revelations was just like, oh, like, dang it, are they gonna make me run that 5K in a pink tutu? Because I don't want to. I don't want to run.
You still have that option.
I know. But it's still a journey. It's still, it's still there. But I just, it's kind of, it is what it is.
Is your view of God changed?
No.
So in other words, you had a good, let's say, faith or understanding a relationship with God before going through this. What helps that, or just confirms that, or how, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, anyway.
Well, anyway, he said.
Yeah. I'm leading you on, Beth, but I'm not. I want you to be.
Like I said, it just, I think I had already accepted a lot of, what we had learned, from this group, and just that, no, I wasn't angry. I wasn't, I might have like a day here and there, very, very rare, but it's just, I just trust, and I just keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I guess it did strengthen it.
Okay.
Because, just so much, I felt cushioned all through 2020, just, and blessed by, people reaching out, and I felt connected. And
do you agree with what the theme of this morning, that cancer was a blessing for you? It's putting you on the spot. I'm sorry. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I would have rather had another blessing, but it's a blessing.
You know what I see? The change that I've seen is in David.
Scott, I agree with you. I was going to say, listening to David, he has a view on what Beth was going through that she probably doesn't even realize.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed him become stronger, and I've noticed, just as she's gone through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will say what's interesting, just in everyone's stories and everyone's experiences, Arnold, you definitely aren't alone. You are strong. You will get through it. But there isn't doom and gloom with God and Christ in you. There isn't. I mean, all of this is what the world would maybe perceive as doom and gloom. That's not it for us at all. We're loved, and that is purely evident in how what we go through is impacting our experiences and other people, our relationships, and it's really actually pretty beautiful.
I mean, God gave me her, and if I didn't have her, I wouldn't have made it through cancer. She was with me through every single thing I went through. So for her, she went through a lot of the same things I went through. I just went through the procedures, and so it's like together we really weathered that. I see. So God put someone in my life who would stick by me, because everyone else I knew took off. Every friend we had left us, ditched us. And it's kind of been an ongoing trend in our life. And her and I just kind of have learned to kind of just stick together and deal with it. And, as long as we got each other, we're going to be okay. So that's, I mean, honestly, cancer sucks. it's not, it wasn't like a great blessing.
Seen
or
that
anything.
bumper sticker.
We're not, yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
the majority of the focus here has been on the blessings that we
Yeah,
have experienced. David touched on something that's equally as important, and that's the blessings that we can pass on to others.
mhm,
Yeah.
You know, his comments about Beth and how she turned the attitudes and perhaps concepts of people around when they came to see her, came in gloomy and left joyful.
Mhm.
All of us in this conversation have experienced things that God wants to use to bless other people.
mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, David, you and I share a common thread of having to learn to walk again. Beth and David have the cancer issues. Arnold's got his medical issues. I've got mine, and all of us have these issues that we've been through
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
will allow us to relate to people in a way that can be a blessing to them.
Mm.
Oh, it's funny, David. It's so funny you said that, because as soon as I read Dennis's email and Arnold's words, I immediately, the first thought, this is so funny, was how lucky his doctors and nurses are that they get to have Arnold as a patient and get to have Jesus love them through
Oh,
Arnold.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was really funny that was my first thought, which was so odd, but
Awesome. It's true.
Dennis, did you know my mom when we still went to New Hope?
Oh, yeah. Mhm, mhm,
I mean, you saw the kind of person she was,
mhm.
the kind of personality she had.
Your mom.
My
was-
mom would walk out into the parking or into the foyer at New Hope after service
Mhm.
and just pick random people and introduce herself. And
No, she was a warrior. She.
yeah, she was. And it's,
You know,
she-
I had this the thought when Scott asked Andy, how were you aware of God when you were kind of living your own free life and living for yourself? And and he says, well, yeah, I knew God was there, but I'm aware that God is, because of Jesus having died and done away with sin, the new Adam, that he actually is in all of us, billions of people, dead, past, alive, or future.
Mhm.
We just have different stages of knowing about that.
Yeah.
And then thinking when Andy was saying, well, God, I had to wrestle with the suicidal stuff. You know, think of the tens of thousands of people, probably in even the United States or around the world during COVID, that have had to wrestle with that same demon, so to speak, and who knows where that, how God might use Andy for that, or any one of us. You know,
Mhm. Amen.
how many of you guys have seen the movie Despicable Me?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
I've seen all
Dennis,
three of them.
Yeah.
Dennis gave me this example a couple years ago, and it's still true today. It's and Arnold, when Arnold brought this up, is that we all have the spirit of Christ in us. We all have that. What we're going to get, and what the accuser is gonna send our way, are the little minions coming around saying, remember how you used to be, remember how the things were.
Mhm.
well,
Mhm.
It doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
It just that's just the suggestions that are going to be thrown our way.
yeah, it's funny, Scott. So Andy and I were just we're talking about this yesterday. We were actually use the Matrix as an example, because what it feels like happens are these bullets coming at you, where it's like depression or all of these things, and then
anxiety, whatever.
whatever are those things. Life is just that way, and you become, because of Christ in you, you do become like Neo, able to dodge whatever's coming at you in that sense. And so anyway, it's just interesting to
They're suggestions being tossed at us by the enemy.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
They're not,
not
I had
interest-
the thought too that the accuser be damned. He doesn't have any power over you and me, anymore. I mean, he can sit there and try to take jabs. He doesn't have any power.
Mhm.
And that's part of the freedom I think we're all feeling these days. Yeah.
I shared this with Dennis a couple of years back, and Chuck Goldberg. Some of us know who he is. Chuck Goldberg gave me a quote one Sunday night when I was talking with him. He told me, he says, "When Satan reminds you of your past, remind him of his future."
Amen. Oh,
Well said, Chuck.
Yeah, yeah, they did, Chuck.
Yeah.
Guys, this has got to be by far one of the best best meetings we've had. I'm just sitting here being blessed.
Aw.
Well, it's a new year, Dennis. Of course it's going to be.
What a way to start. What a way to take on the year with optimism and hope and excitement. And you're blessing me. I have not had to go through or endure the difficulties that some of you have just gone through. I mean, I've had other issues, but nothing compared. But what I'm hearing through your experiences just blesses the socks off me. And I'm hoping, what witnesses in my spirit is, I'm hoping that people that are going through something heavy and having really are being discouraged, and as Scott says, really taking on the onslaughts of the minions. I'm hoping we can share even this video with them.
Yeah.
And let it see what God will do through this message, this witness of hope. Every one of you that have shared your experiences here, witness to the hope of
Well,
Christ.
he's gonna put those people in our path and in your path, who need to be encouraged, who need to be.
So a couple of things before we draw it to close. One of the things that occurred to me, do you each know each other's emails? Okay.
No.
Would you be opposed to me sending out a blanket email with everybody's email on it?
Oh, no, not at all from my perspective. For example, I don't have Chrissy and Andy's email.
Okay. Let me put together something that will be easy for you to use, so you can copy paste into your own contacts or build a group list or whatever. I'd love to see you guys begin to interact and share things among you, and don't wait for this Sunday morning experience or some other platform that through me. But be free to just share conversations, however, or questions with each other. So I'll do that. I'll put that out there.
Well, this is great. We could all talk about you.
Chrissy,
Do whatever. Yeah, do whatever.
I do need to mention that one of the greatest blessings that came out of my accident and everything was the fact that Dawn and I remarried.
Yeah.
After 18 years of divorce, one of the greatest blessings that came out of that was the fact that Dawn and I reconnected and remarried. And as I mentioned, I think last week, I'm curious as to how God's going to use that as well.
Amen. Yeah. So what is God going to unfold even further through each of our stories, in each of our lives? That's the thing I'm looking forward to, and I'm caught in my spirit with the fact that he has just begun to show us who he is and what he's doing in our lives. Every day, every moment's an adventure. What's up, Dad? What? Show me what you're doing. Tell me what you're saying. And to realize that we don't have to look for him. We don't have to search for that. It's in us. He's in us. He's unfolding. He's speaking all the time. Scott wrote about resolutions the other day, and I was thinking about Paul. He describes in Colossians, I'm an apostle through the will of God. When Paul started his new year on his way down to Damascus, do you think he made a resolution? I'm sure, I'm going to kill as many or have martyr or whatever, terrorize as many Christians I can find. He had no idea the will of God. All of a sudden, in a flash, his life changes and he realizes the will of God found him. And then it began to unfold in him. Wow. He had no idea of this new life, his own set of circumstances, his own problems, all of those were just ready And they were the matrix or whatever, bringing about this realization.
Mhm.
That's why I don't do resolutions. And I'm also I'm not a very goal-oriented person. I always had a problem like in the corporate world when they would be like, what are your 5-year goals? I would always have to make stuff up just to,
Oh, yeah.
sound
Yeah.
normal, but I
Yeah.
never really had any because
Mhm.
God always did stuff bigger and greater than I could ever. I
Mhm.
just flying by the seat of my pants, so to speak, but in a God,
Yeah.
knowing that God is guiding me.
And so even the circumstances are I love Grubb's definition of this. Every problem is God in disguise.
Good.
Isn't that something?
Good.
Every adversity is God in disguise.
Because I would see people, they would make goals, and the goals were their God, like, and it was just like if life differed a little bit and they couldn't reach a certain goal, then it was seen as a negative instead of like an opportunity or a problem. So I don't know.
I think, Beth, I have to agree with you, Beth. I always struggled with the same thing, particularly in the corporate world where they wanted your 5-year goal. And I have since come discovered that those are just things that are going to get in the way. I mean, they really are. They're just going to get in the way of what God's trying to do because you get focused. I met a guy in Africa who sold his business to go become a maintenance man at an orphanage. And he knew the people running the orphanage, and they sent an email out asking for help, that they needed somebody to come to Africa and be a maintenance guy. And his wife saw the email, and he's got this successful business going. And she says, we need to do this. He goes, what? She says, we need to do this. And it gnawed on him. And it turned out it took him 6 months to sell his business and set up a new owner. And then they left everything and went to Africa to become the maintenance crew for this orphanage. Okay. And his wife, and I think he had 3 or 4 kids, that they all took off to Africa. And they were having the time of their life.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
That's awesome.
we have to be careful not to let our goals get in the way of what can be most rewarding.
Amen.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. What a great morning. And really, this is, as I shared with Arnold the other day, Colossians is just opening up to me. Paul's prayer that we would realize God. What do we not know about God that we need to get to know? Wow. And there's so much we'll never in this life.
It's interesting too, Dennis. It's almost like when he says, be still and know that I am the Lord. Be still and I will reveal, in that sense.
There we go.
When you
Put
get
away,
busy, you
put
get busy.
away our own stuff. Yep. So praise God, go forth, be a blessing wherever you are. I'm looking forward to more conversations like this in the coming weeks. And grace be with you all today.
Yeah, you're on our hearts, Arnold.
Yes,
Okay,
Arnold.
guys.
We didn't get a chance to, we're going to hear more from you, but you're in our hearts, man. So
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
All right.
bless
Yeah,
everybody.
Have a good week.
All right.
Yes.
God bless.
Take care.
Thank you.